So glad you are here. It's Magical Tuesday in my world, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about saltwater circles. A lot of people mix salt with water and draw a circle, and one of the concepts that gets associated with it is protection. So it is one of many ways that you can create a shield, a protective shield around your space and yourself and whatever you're working on and whatever you value. So glad you guys are here today. The Usually when that's done by somebody, they're often also drawing a circle with incense. And at that point, you've taken salt of the earth, you know that expression, oh, they're the salt of the earth, right? Usually means that they're very practical in a admiring or at least a positive sort of way. And they're taking the salt and they're mixing it with water. So you have earth and water. And then they're using fire to light incense, which then becomes part of the air. So you're combining fire and air. So if you're drawing a circle with salt water and then with incense, you're using the 4 Greek elements in the creation of your space. And these are the only 4 in that system. So you've created everything. You can argue spirit is part of that system. It's not, but but you can make the argument and you would then embody the spirit for that. But that concept of saltwater circles being protective goes pretty far back. One of my favorite examples of it, going back for at least a few centuries, comes from the original version of a Grimm's Brother fairy tale that doesn't get retold very often. And it's had more than one name because the Grimm brothers, when they started out, they were trying to be ethnographers. They were basically going to their kitchen and asking the adults in that space who worked for them, who served them, to tell them their favorite stories that they told each other for entertainment. So these were, they're very adult. All the characters were quite violent. And sexuality was at least inferred in some of these tales, if not outright expressed. Eventually, the Grimm's brothers discovered that the market for the tales that they had collected were the parents of children, and the parents would read the stories to the children. So they started cleaning them up. They started taking particularly the star of the story, the protagonist's violence started disappearing. Any references to anything particularly sexual was eliminated. They basically did what you could call Disneyfying them. And then, of course, Disney has further taken those tales and Disneyfied them all the more. But if you go back and you read the original version, and I've read it translated into English, yes, of a story that's often called The Maiden of the Golden Hands or The Maiden of the Silver Hands, there's an example in there, a folk example, not a ceremonial example, but a folk example of someone using salt water to protect themselves. It is, in fact, the little maiden. And if you read this story, honestly, from a modern perspective, what it struck me as when I first read it in my studies was that this is really a story about a child with a parent, a father in this case, who has a drug problem, some sort of addiction. Because the conversations about doing harm to this daughter always occur when he is away from home, usually on his way home, and then the little mischievous or devilish creature shows up in his cart and talks him into handing his daughter over to the imp or the devil that he's talking to as a means of gaining things he wants. And nothing smacks me of addiction more than that level of bad decision making. And he agrees. He absolutely agrees. Again, a really good analogy for drug addicted parents right now, I think. And one of the ways she gets out of being taken is she starts crying. And as a result of crying these salty tears, she is surrounded in a circle of salt water, and the imp or the devil declares that he cannot take her because she is protected by the salt water. So do you see this in ceremonial magic? Yes, you do sometimes see it in ceremonial magic, but here it is by the folk, by the people, by the servants in the back of the house of the Grimm brothers. So I'm going to tell you that I think there's a lot of power and strength in the egregore, in the thought process behind salt water as a protective circle you can draw yourself, or even just some salt, just like eggshell powder is used. You can sprinkle this around your space. You can create a safer space for yourself if you're going to do some sort of working by making that circle around yourself and your immediate environment, the tools you're going to use. But you can also use it to create a safe space in your bedroom, your home. Nobody needs to know if you have carpeting on the floor around your office space. This is a wonderful protective method that's easy to access. You literally need a packet of salt or a little salt out of a salt shaker and a cup of water. Mix them together. There's no special magical ratio. I have definitely seen people like dip in with a measuring device 3 times and do 3 because they like that number 3 as completion, like a level 1 completion. But if you're feeling a little rattled by your space, try creating yourself a little more protection with a salt and water circle. This is Liz from Magus Books and Herbs in Minneapolis and magusbooks.com. Wishing you a great week. We'll see you tomorrow for the big show. And in the meantime, blessed be.